I met Emory in a situation that, if I could turn back time, I would probably still let it happen exactly the same way. Because that was the day everything began. It was an early autumn afternoon on the university campus. The wind blew through the rows of maple trees, sending red leaves fluttering across the pathways. Students were bustling about after class, and I was running away. Not from the police or anything dramatic like in the movies. I was running away from my older brother. Blaine! My brother's voice rang out behind me, making me run even faster. Stop! No! I yelled back while running. The reason was very simple. I had accidentally destroyed his brand new gaming console. Well, actually, I dropped it from the desk 3 times. I dashed across the outdoor basketball court, cut through the lawn, and ran straight into the economics building. I thought I had successfully shaken him off, until I turned a corner in the hallway and slammed right into someone. Bam! I bounced backward. The other person only took half a step back. A hand quickly caught my shoulder before I could fall again. Whoa, careful. A deep, calm voice. I looked up. Standing in front of me was a guy nearly a full head taller than me. Blue shirt with the sleeves rolled up, backpack slung over one shoulder. Slightly messy brown hair and eyes, a warm amber color. He looked at me like he was trying to figure out what had just happened. Were you running a marathon in the hallway? I opened my mouth to answer when, Blaine! Shit. My brother appeared at the end of the hallway. I glanced back and immediately turned to the person in front of me. Please help me. He raised an eyebrow. Help with what? Pretend you're talking to me. What? I quickly pulled him closer and turned my back to block my brother's line of sight. My brother ran past the hallway, his eyes scanning everywhere for me. I held my breath. The person in front of me stayed perfectly still. A few seconds passed. Then my brother continued running down the stairs. I breathed a sigh of relief. Made it! I turned around and realized I was still gripping his wrist. I immediately let go. Sorry. He chuckled, a very pleasant laugh. Let me guess. He crossed his arms. You just did something that made your brother want to kill you. I blinked. You know my brother? He nodded. Yeah. Then he extended his hand. Emory. My heart skipped a beat. Wait, Emory? My brother mentioned that name almost every day. The top senior in the department. Basketball team captain. The student every professor loved. I shook his hand. Blaine. Emory smiled. I know. I froze. You know? Your brother talks about you all the time. I groaned. Oh no. Emory laughed. Don't worry. It's mostly stuff like how you once tried to cook ramen in a coffee maker. Covered my face. I was only 17. And the time you fell asleep during orientation. I hate my brother. Emory laughed even louder. And that's when I realized one thing. His smile was really beautiful. Right then, my phone vibrated. A message from my brother. I know you're in this building. I sighed. Emory glanced at the screen and smiled. Want me to save you again? I looked at him. Got any ideas? He thought for a second, then lifted his backpack and tossed it to me. Put this on. Huh. Put it on. I did as he said. The backpack was big enough to cover half my body. Emory pulled my hoodie up over my head, then said, Walk behind me. We stepped out into the hallway. I kept my head down and followed him like a shadow. The moment we went down the stairs, my brother was standing in the lobby. My heart pounded wildly. Emory walked straight forward. Hey! My brother turned around. Emory, have you seen? Emory placed a hand on my shoulder. My cousin. He said it so naturally. He's visiting campus. My brother only glanced at me once. The hoodie covered most of my face. Oh, he nodded. Have you seen Blaine? Emory shook his head. No. A second of silence. Then my brother sighed. If you see him, tell him he's dead meat. I'll pass the message. We walked out of the building. The door closed behind us. I turned to Emory. You just saved my life. He shrugged. I guess I did. I smiled. What do you want as a reward? He thought for a moment, then looked at me for a long time. His gaze felt a little different, like he was considering something. Finally, he said, "Pizza. Tonight." I smiled. Deal. At that moment, I had no idea that the pizza dinner that night would be the first step of a story that would completely change my life. That night, Emory and I met at a small pizza place near the dorms. It was the kind of spot every student on campus had been to at least once. Neon lights hung above the glass door, and the smell of dough and cheese wafted out onto the sidewalk. Emory arrived first. I saw him through the window. He was sitting at a table near the window, one hand spinning a glass of soda, the other scrolling on his phone. The warm yellow lighting made his face look even gentler. And I noticed a few girls at the next table secretly glancing at him. Not surprising. Emory was the type of person who caught everyone's attention the moment he entered a room. I pushed the door open. The bell jingled. Emory looked up and smiled. "You're here." For some reason, just those two simple words made me feel shy. I pulled out the chair and sat across from him. "Has my brother found me yet?" Emory smiled faintly. "Not yet, but I think it's only a matter of time." I sighed. "My life is over." "No, it's not." He shrugged. "Your brother yells a lot, but he's actually pretty soft-hearted." I narrowed my eyes. "Are we talking about the same person?" Emory laughed. The server brought out the pizzas. 2 large ones, pepperoni and cheese. I took one bite and nearly forgot that my life was in danger. "Oh my God. This is amazing." Emory looked at me like he was watching an entertaining show. "Do you always react this strongly to food?" "I'm a sophomore," I said. "Good food is a rare experience for me." He smiled. We started talking. First, just light topics. Classes, strict professors, campus parties. But the more we talked, the more I realized Emory wasn't like what I had imagined. He wasn't arrogant. He didn't show off. In fact, he was quite funny. "Your brother once tried to bake a cake for his ex-girlfriend," Emory said. "I don't want to hear this." The kitchen almost caught fire. I burst out laughing. "Sounds exactly like my brother." Emory laughed too. But then, the conversation slowed down a little. He leaned back in his chair, looking at me. Actually, I was a little surprised. "About what?" "Your brother said you were pretty shy." I raised an eyebrow. "I'm not shy." "No. No." Emory smiled lightly. "Then why, when you first met me, did you look at me like I was a professor about to fail you?" I froze. "You noticed that?" "Very clearly." My face heated up. I couldn't tell him that I had heard so much about him, that in my head, Emory was practically a legend in the department. Instead, I shrugged. "Maybe because you look kind of intimidating." Emory laughed. "Me? You're taller than almost everyone in the room. Is that my fault? And you have this look in your eyes, like you understand everything." Emory rested his chin on his hand and looked at me. "I didn't know I had that kind of look." "You do," I said, "but not as scary as I expected." He tilted his head slightly. "Oh, you're really easy to talk to." A short silence. Not awkward, just peaceful. Outside the window, students continued walking along the campus paths. Maple leaves drifted in the wind. Emory broke the silence. "What's your major?" "Marketing." "Really?" "Yeah." He raised an eyebrow. "Same as me." "I know," I said, then immediately realized I answered too fast. Emory narrowed his eyes. "You know? I mean, my brother mentioned it." Emory looked at me for a few seconds, then smiled. "I figured." We finished almost the entire pizza. When I stood up to get more soda, I overheard 2 girls at the next table whispering, "Is that Emory?" "Yeah. He's the basketball captain." "Who's the guy with him?" "I think it's his friend's little brother." I pretended not to hear, but when I returned to the table, Emory was looking at me with an amused expression. "What?" I asked. He shrugged. "Nothing. That smile means there's definitely something." Emory nodded toward the next table. "Did you hear what they said?" I don't care. Yeah. He smiled faintly. Good. I sat down. Then Emory said something that caught me off guard. I'm really glad I met you today. Really? Yeah. He spun the soda glass in his hand. Your brother always talks about you, but I never had the chance to actually talk to you. And Emory looked straight into my eyes, his gaze calm, warm. You're more interesting than I thought. My heart beat faster. I didn't know how to respond. Luckily, right at that moment, the pizza shop door flew open. A familiar voice rang out. Blaine! I froze. Emory looked over my shoulder, then smiled slightly. Well, he said, looks like your brother found you. I turned around. My brother was standing at the door, his eyes full of murderous intent. I turned to Emory. Will you save me again? Emory leaned back in his chair, watching the scene like he was enjoying an interesting movie. Then he said, this time, I think you'll have to fight your own battle. I turned to face my brother. He stood at the door like a cop who had just caught an escaped criminal. His gaze swept across the room, then stopped right at me. Blaine. I turned to Emory. You said he was soft-hearted. Emory shrugged. I said that after you get caught. My brother walked toward our table. Each step sounded like a death knell. He stopped in front of me and crossed his arms. Do you want to explain yourself? I swallowed. Do you want the short version or the long version? The version that explains why my gaming console is now in 2 pieces. I sighed. It was an accident. 3 times. How did you know it was 3 times? My brother pointed at me. You left a 5-minute voicemail. I turned to Emory. That was when I panicked. Emory was trying hard not to laugh. My brother finally looked at Emory. You're here too. Emory nodded. Yeah. Did you see this guy? Emory calmly sipped his soda. No. I almost burst out laughing. My brother narrowed his eyes. Emory. Don't protect him. Emory shrugged. I'm just eating pizza. My brother let out a heavy sigh. Then he sat down in the chair next to me. God. You give me headaches. I blinked. So, you're not going to kill me? Not yet. I turned to Emory. You heard that. Not yet. Emory smiled. After a while, the atmosphere calmed down. My brother took a slice of pizza from the plate. Anyway, you're paying for the console. I know. $300. I nearly choked on my pizza. What? Emory laughed. My brother just shrugged. Market price. I muttered. I'm going to have to eat instant noodles for 2 months. You deserve it. After that, my brother stood up. I have to get back to the library. He looked at me. Don't break anything else. Then he turned to Emory. Keep an eye on this kid for me. Emory nodded. Will do. My brother left the shop. The door closed. I leaned back in my chair. I survived. Emory looked at me. You're really good at causing trouble. It's a talent. He smiled. A little while later, we also left the pizza place. The sky outside had already turned dark. The campus lights lit up along the paths. Students walked by in small groups. The air was cool. We walked slowly along the stone path. You live in the South Dorm, right? Emory asked. Yeah. I'm heading in that direction too. We walked side by side. After a while, Emory said, Actually, I was quite surprised. About what? Your brother is quite protective of you. I know. I lightly kicked a pebble. He still thinks I'm a 15-year-old kid. Emory was silent for a few seconds. Then he said, I think I understand why. Why? He looked at me. His gaze softened a bit. You look quite vulnerable. I stopped walking. What? Emory smiled. Not in a bad way. I'm not weak. I didn't say that. He raised his hands in surrender. It's just, you make people want to protect you. My heart skipped a beat. I quickly kept walking. You sound just like my brother. Maybe because he's right. I glanced at him. Whose side are you on? The side of truth. We walked past the outdoor basketball court. The court lights were still on. A few students were playing a late-night game. Emory stopped to watch. I noticed his gaze change. Focused. Familiar. Do you miss playing? I asked. Yeah. You're the captain, right? Emory looked slightly surprised. You know? I shrugged. My brother talks a lot. He smiled softly. Sometimes I think you know more about me than I realize. I stiffened a little. I quickly changed the subject. You're about to graduate soon, right? Yeah. His voice lowered slightly. Just a few more months. Where will you go after? Probably New York. Wow, I said sincerely. That's cool. Emory looked at me. What about you? Me? I smiled. I still have 2 years to survive here. He smiled along. We continued walking. My dorm appeared ahead. The lights in the rooms glowed like little squares. I stopped in front of the entrance. Thanks for the pizza. No problem, Emory said. Then he added, thanks for the interesting evening. I was a little surprised. Really? Yeah. He looked at me for a few seconds. We should do it again. My heart beat faster. You mean pizza again? Maybe. He smiled. Or coffee. I nodded. Yeah, sure. A short silence followed. Neither of us left immediately. Finally, Emory said, good night, Blaine. Good night, Emory. He turned and walked away. I stood in front of the dorm entrance, watching his back. And for the first time, I realized one thing. I really wanted to see him again. Many more times. But I didn't know that, starting from that night, Emory would begin appearing in my life more and more. And little by little, he would become the first person I thought about every day. After that pizza night, I thought everything would go back to normal. Emory would continue being my brother's friend. And I would just be the troublesome little brother he happened to meet. But things didn't turn out that way. 3 days later, while I was sitting in the library trying to read a marketing textbook as thick as a brick, my phone vibrated. A message from Emory. I stared at the screen for a few seconds before opening it. Where are you? I typed back. Library. A moment later. What floor? 3rd. 3 minutes later. Someone pulled out the chair across from me and sat down. I looked up. Emory. He placed a cup of coffee on the table in front of me. You look like you're about to fall asleep. What are you doing here? I go to this school too. I mean, why did you come find me? Emory opened his laptop. I have a group project to work on here. He nodded toward my book. And you're being tortured by that textbook. I sighed. The chapter on brand strategy. Emory smiled faintly. Pretty bad. Extremely bad. I flipped a few pages and groaned. My brain refuses to absorb the information. Emory glanced at the page. You're reading it wrong. I'm reading it with my eyes. Not like that. He turned the book toward himself. This chapter only needs you to understand 3 main points. Then he began explaining. In just 10 minutes, what I had been struggling with for 2 hours suddenly became clear. I stared at him. Are you a wizard? Emory shrugged. I've survived 4 years here. You should open a university survival class. Not a bad idea. From that day on, Emory started appearing regularly. First at the library, then at the cafe near the department, sometimes at the basketball court. We began studying together. Or, at least I studied while Emory did his own work. One afternoon, while I was trying to write an essay, Emory looked up from his laptop. Blaine. You've been staring at the screen for 3 minutes without typing anything. I'm thinking. You're daydreaming. I smiled. Close enough. Emory shook his head and pushed a chocolate bar toward me. Energy boost. I think you're raising a pet. Maybe. Those small moments gradually became habits. We texted almost every day, sharing stupid memes, complaining about assignments. Sometimes Emory even sent me photos of food when he cooked. One time I replied, "You actually cook?" He sent back, "I'm not your brother." I laughed out loud in the middle of class. But the thing I started to notice was that Emory treated me a little differently from others. He always paid attention to me. If I hadn't slept enough, he would notice. If I was stressed about exams, he would drag me out to eat. If I said I was fine, he would usually look at me for a few seconds and say, "No, you're not." And strangely, he was usually right. One evening near midterms, I was sitting on the steps in front of the dorm. I had just gotten my marketing test score back. Not bad, but not great either. I was staring at my phone screen when a car pulled up in front. The door opened. Emory stepped out. "What are you doing out here?" "I'm contemplating life." He sat down on the step beside me. "Sounds serious." I showed him my phone with the score. Emory looked. B+. Not bad for you. "I'm not you." He was silent for a moment, then said, "Come on." "Where?" "To eat." "I'm not hungry." It wasn't a question. He stood up. I sighed and stood up to follow him. We drove to a small burger place a few blocks from campus. While waiting for the food, Emory looked at me. "You're under too much pressure." "I don't want to disappoint my brother." Emory frowned slightly. "You're studying for yourself, not for your brother." "I know, but knowing was easier than doing." Emory looked at me for a few seconds, then said gently, "You're doing really well already." I looked up. "Really?" "Yeah," he said with certainty. "I've seen you study." For some reason, just that one sentence made my chest feel much lighter. When we finished eating and returned to the car, the night wind was a little cold. I hugged my arms to my chest. Emory noticed. He took off his jacket. "Again?" I asked. "You always forget to bring a jacket." He draped it over my shoulders. The jacket was still warm from his body. I looked at him. The distance between us at that moment was very close. The streetlight shone down on Emory's face. He was looking at me, without saying anything, just looking. My heart started beating fast. A dangerous thought flashed through my mind. That I wanted this moment to last longer. That I liked being close to him like this. And right at that moment, I began to understand what I had been trying not to think about. I didn't just like being around Emory. I was starting to fall in love with him. After that night, everything inside me began to change. But on the outside, life continued as normal. I still went to class, still complained about assignments, still met Emory at the library, cafe, or basketball court. There was only one difference. Every time I saw him, my heart beat a little faster. One Friday afternoon, I was sitting at our usual table in the library when Emory texted, "What are you doing tonight?" I replied immediately, "Not sure. Might sleep." His reply came almost instantly. "Don't sleep." I laughed. "Why?" "The department is having a party." I frowned. "A party?" "The seniors are organizing it. Kind of a pre-graduation party." I typed, "I'm not a senior." 3 dots appeared. Then a new message. "I know, but I want you to come." I stared at the screen for a few seconds. For some reason, my heart beat faster again. Okay. That evening, the student hall was livelier than usual. Music echoed from inside. Students stood in groups chatting and laughing. String lights hung everywhere, making the space look like a small festival. I stepped inside and almost immediately spotted Emory. It wasn't hard. He stood in the middle of a group of students, taller than almost everyone, wearing a black button-up shirt with sleeves rolled up, holding a glass of soda. He was talking and smiling, and as always, several people around him were looking at him more than usual. I stood at the door for a few seconds. Then Emory saw me. His eyes lit up immediately. He said something to his group and walked toward me. "You came." I nodded. "You told me to." "Yeah." He looked me up and down, not in a creepy way, just appraising. "You look good." I looked down at my shirt. "It's just a normal shirt." "Yeah." Emory smiled lightly. "But you still look good." My heart skipped a beat. He handed me a can of soda. "No alcohol." "Good," I said. "I don't want to do anything stupid again." Emory smiled. We stood near the balcony of the hall. Music still played inside. Students danced, talked, took photos. After a while, a girl from Emory's group walked over. "Emory." She put her arm around his shoulder. "Where did you disappear to?" Emory gestured toward me. I was talking. The girl turned to me. Oh, she smiled. You are? Blaine. Brother of. I know. She smiled. Your brother talks about you a lot. I groaned. Oh my God. Emory laughed. The girl turned back to Emory. We're about to play beer pong. Emory shrugged. I'm not drinking. You don't have to drink. Just play. She looked at me. You're playing too, right? Before I could answer, Emory said, No. She raised an eyebrow. So protective? Emory just smiled. He doesn't need to get dragged into your crazy games. The girl laughed. Fine. She waved. Don't stay out on the balcony all night. When she left, I turned to Emory. Did you just turn her down for me? Yeah. You don't think I can decide for myself? Emory looked at me. His eyes were a little serious. I know you can. But, he shrugged. I like making sure you're okay. I shook my head and smiled. You really are like my brother. No. Emory said softly. Your brother wants to control you. He looked straight into my eyes. I just don't want to see you get into trouble. I don't know why, but that sentence made my chest feel warm. A while later, the music inside changed to something slower. Many couples started dancing. Emory looked inside, then turned to me. Do you dance? I laughed. No. Never. I'll step on people's feet. Emory smiled lightly. I can teach you. I looked at him. Are you asking me to dance? Emory shrugged. Just an idea. My heart started beating fast. I looked into the hall, then back at Emory. Just one song. Deal. We stepped onto the dance floor. The lights were softer. The music slow. Emory placed his hand lightly on my shoulder. I placed my hand on his arm. The distance between us was very close. I could smell his light cologne. Emory led me step by step. Slow down. I'm trying. He smiled. You're doing well. We swayed gently to the music. I looked down at my feet a few times, then finally looked up. Emory was looking at me, without saying anything, just looking. His eyes were softer than usual. My heart pounded so hard I was afraid he might hear it. And in that moment, I suddenly realized one thing. If I wasn't careful, I might fall for him even more, so much more, that I wouldn't be able to turn back. The song ended, but for a few seconds, Emory and I remained standing still, as if both of us had forgotten there were many people around, until a group of students behind us clapped and cheered loudly. Woo! Emory finally danced. I startled and took a step back. Emory also smiled slightly and removed his hand from my shoulder. Let's go, he said quietly. We left the dance floor and returned to the balcony. The air outside was cooler. I leaned my hands on the railing. My heart was still beating fast. Emory stood beside me. After a while he said, You danced better than you thought. I almost stepped on your feet 3 times. I dodged them. I smiled lightly, but then, the silence stretched longer than usual. Not uncomfortable, just full of thoughts. I looked down at the campus below. Students walked under the yellow lights. Music from the hall drifted out. Emory broke the silence. Blaine. I'm graduating soon. I turned to him. Yeah. Only a few months left. I nodded. You already said that. Emory looked out into the darkness. I might move to New York. For work. Yeah. A marketing company there had contacted him. This, I had also heard from my brother. But hearing it directly from Emory felt different. For some reason, my chest felt heavy. Sounds great. I tried to sound cheerful. New York? Big city. Lots of opportunities. Emory nodded. Yeah. Then he turned to look at me. But it also means I'll be leaving here. I didn't know what to say. It was obvious.
Senior graduate.
They leave. But when I thought about Emory no longer being on campus, no longer meeting me at the library, no longer texting to ask what I was doing, I felt strange. I forced a smile. You say it like you're going to disappear from the planet. Emory smiled faintly. No, he said. It's just, Everything will be different. A light breeze blew across the balcony. I looked at him. Under the dim light, Emory's face looked more serious than usual, like he was thinking about something deeper. I looked away, because I was afraid. If I looked at him any longer, I would say something I shouldn't. After a while, Emory said, "Want to take a walk? Now?" "Yeah." I nodded. We left the hall. The campus at night was much quieter. Streetlights shone down on the stone paths. Dry maple leaves crunched under our feet. We walked past the basketball court, past the library, past the lawn where students usually studied during the day. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "Have you ever been scared?" Emory looked at me. "Of what?" "The future." He thought for a few seconds. "Yes." "Really?" "Yeah," he said simply. "Whenever you start something new, it's scary." I lightly kicked a dry leaf. "I haven't even graduated yet. You still have plenty of time. But I still feel like everything is changing." Emory looked at me. "Maybe because you're growing up." "I'm already grown." "Not completely." He smiled lightly. "But you're on your way." We stopped near the small lake on campus. The water surface reflected the lights. The night wind was a little colder. I crossed my arms. Emory noticed. He took off his jacket. "You don't have to. You're shivering." "I'm not." He had already draped the jacket over my shoulders before I could protest. I sighed. "You always do this." "Do what?" "Take care of me." Emory paused for a moment. He stopped mid-sentence. I looked at him. "Just what?" Emory was silent for a few seconds. His eyes looked different, deeper. Then he said softly, I want to make sure you're okay." My heart pounded hard. The distance between us at that moment was very close. Just a few steps. I could see every detail on his face clearly. The light reflected in his eyes. And in that moment, a question slipped out of my mouth before I could think. "Emory." "Yeah." "Have you ever felt that things between us are a little strange?" Emory looked at me. He didn't answer immediately, just looked. The night wind blew across the lake. Finally he said, "Yes." My heart nearly stopped. "Why?" I asked. Emory looked down at the water, then turned back to me. His eyes were more serious than I had ever seen. "Because sometimes," he spoke slowly, "I'm not sure I should be around you like this." My chest tightened. "What do you mean?" Emory breathed lightly, as if he was struggling with his own thoughts. Then he said a sentence that made my whole world pause. "Because you're my best friend's little brother." He looked straight into my eyes. "And because, if I'm not careful," he paused, "I might start feeling something I shouldn't feel." My heart was racing wildly. I whispered, "Like what?" Emory looked at me for a very long time. Then he said very softly, "Like, liking you." The air around us seemed to fall completely silent. I didn't know if I was breathing or not. And in that moment, I realized something that made my heart both hurt and happy at the same time. I wasn't the only one trying to hide my feelings. Emory was too.